Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Daily Southampton, part of the Global Sports Podcast Network. Today I am your host, Zach Ingo Finch. I'm joined, as ever, by my wonderful co-host, Gregory Elliott, who has managed to 2 days on the trot not lose his microphone. How are you, mate?
Yeah.
We make jokes. As you can tell, we're in a bit of a jovial mood. By jovial, I mean that there might be an end to some of the uncertainty at the club, because apparently, according to all of our sources and confirmed and written on the dotted line, is we have a new manager who is absolutely not a single one of the candidates we have discussed, including on today's on the episode that would have been released yesterday, because I don't think anybody knew until about 8 a.m. Friday morning.
Yeah, what do the bookies know, mate? Like, all these prices coming in for Corbrand and Danny Roll, but...
Well, I'm guessing it's because apparently... So I guess we'll start with... before we go into who the manager is, we'll discuss some of those other bits. So it looks to be that some of the candidates we suspected were interviewed. Some of that seems to have been confirmed by some of the Daily Echo reporting. Where they're getting their sources, who knows? But usually they're, probably usually correct about things like that. There's sort of sources that Roll had an interview. It was eager to join, but a lot of the problems with hiring all of those managers, which are issues that unfortunately befall a lot of clubs, and specifically ours the last couple of years, is that we need to pay money to get them. And unfortunately, we've invested it into having different types of beer at the stadium. So alas,
that really impressive fireworks display when we were on Amazon as well.
I feel like Amazon paid for a lot of that. So I say, if I'm totally honest, but yeah, obviously, all jokes aside and stuff, it's a reminder to everybody out there that we basically know nothing all the time. And always take our podcast with a pinch of salt, because we have never claimed to be experts in either football or anything else. We're just two mates that like to chat about it and have a laugh. And quite frankly, it's probably our saving grace, because I do feel sorry for the journalists that do come out and say that their solid sources have said A and then B never happens. And I think it confirms that some of the things that we've thought in the past, such as David Moyes, Graham Potter, all that kind of stuff, seemed a bit pipe dreamy. And I know a lot of people are like, oh no, but we could get him in. I'm like, yeah, but
I just can't believe it was ever on the cards.
we just don't want to spend that amount of money. Like, half the transfers we made this season were sort of players that would have gone down to the Championship. The other half are some lovely transfers, don't get me wrong, but then our best players turned out to be an academy prospect. So the idea that we were going to break the
someone
bank,
absolutely mental to come in and take charge of the team at this point, and it turns out that's probably what we've got.
and that seems to be what we've got. A man who most recently's tenure at Roma ended without happiness, but previously seems to have done all right at Torino, even scrapping in car parks over what he thinks is right about the team. Let's just hope it's not like the last sort of transfer we had from Roma, mate, which was Danny Osvaldo.
Look. Wow. No, I don't think I've got a response to that. That's
yeah.
Look, we wanted change and we wanted something different, and I don't really think that it gets more the other end of the scale from a sort of soft-spoken, gentle parenting style approach of Russell Martin to who, from what I can tell from everything I've read and seen about him, just seems to be a passionate, hot-headed Croatian man who isn't as strong as in his beliefs as Russell Martin was. So I don't know.
We'll have to see.
We wanted something different, and
yeah,
different
that's
is what we've got.
We wanted something different, and like I said, that I when I was asked, and they were like, "Oh, what of the names do you like being linked?" And I'm kind of like, to be honest, I don't mind a left field pick as long as it makes sense and is something different and offers, and for every sort of good manager we usually get an off one. I don't have a lot of faith in Sports Republic's choices so far. That's no disrespect to our new incoming manager. It's just one of those things that, it just, when it came out that they hadn't even started thinking about candidates to replace him and he went on Sunday. We're now 5 days later, and they seem to have found the answer to all of our questions. And what was originally going to be a 6-month contract that became an 18th-month contract, but is 6
An
months.
18-month contract with a 6-month break review is
Yeah.
the important part, which sounds a lot like a 6-month contract with a potential extension, but phrased differently.
Potentially, I'm guessing somewhere in between there, it just means that he'll maybe get some money under it. But I think some of the things that do definitely worry me is if we've gone, if they've decided that they think he's the strongest candidate, and also it saves them a little bit of money, all for it. If they have decided they don't want to go for some of the candidates that they would prefer because they have to spend some money, that's slightly worrying because we're about to go into a transfer window that everyone and their dog kind of knows is going to be vital for not only the rest of the season, which, however it may be, although a lot of us have already accepted relegation at this point, however, it will be extremely important for the next couple of seasons, or at least the next season.
You're a Football Manager player, so
I am.
you probably know. You're probably going to understand the reference I'm going to make, but there's a challenge where you start at the bottom right and try and win all of the different Champions Leagues across the continents. And
Correct.
I recently watched someone attempt that, and what the running theme was that every job he got offered came with "We hope that you're good at working with low resources," and it just feels like that's the niche that Juric actually has carved himself,
Oh, you're right.
because he did it with his previous teams, right? With the lowest budget in the league, he stayed in Serie A twice in a row. With was it Hellas Veronas? So if that's the niche he's carved himself, you're going to do well with not a lot. The most interesting thing I've seen, and obviously I'm no Serie A expert, all of my reading about his play style and his approach has come since the news broke this morning. So, but it looks like he likes a 4-3-2-1 system, which is fine. It sort of fits. I can see a lot of our players fitting into that system. But that interesting, what that means is there's no wingers, which is fascinating because we've got about 23 of them. So, I mean, Diblin's natural position tends to be in like a number 10 through the middle anyway, on slightly to one side, which would fit into that system. As the same as I guess could be said for Adam Armstrong and Ben Burton Diaz, maybe. But like all of our natural wingers, like Sulemana, Ryan Fraser, does it just mean we're not going to see him anymore?
Your words, not mine, mate. But where I'm at is that once again, there's a transfer window coming up, and wing backs is something we've also got abundance of. But I guess we'll speak a little bit more about this after a word from our partners at Zencaster.
Yeah, so we here at the Global Sports Podcast Network have spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform, and Zencaster came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencaster.
So yeah, this is the thing, is obviously we've not really had much of a chance to look at how he's going to set up, and as you said, this is what the formation that we've seen. But if we're looking to play without wingers, we've got quite a lot. What this means for a lot of the personnel will be interesting as well. It's the guy seems like an extremely different type of character to their previous boss, which is something everybody in life usually has to deal with. At some point, you're going to get a boss that's different to the boss you've had previously, and part of existing is having the mentality to adapt to that. But obviously, the problem that you've got is what happens when your job role becomes obsolete, and that's, I think, some of the worry that you've got with probably some of the players right now, and how willing they're going to be to adapt to fit into a system. But also importantly, how willing he will be to adapt the system to the resources that he has, because that is a big problem, as we all know, that we've struggled with so far this season.
Yeah. And I guess you're right. It's going to be trying to fit these square pegs into round holes and see what we can do. And we needed something different, and this is something. The word is that he's a high pressing, style of play type manager that prefers his players to be super fit and to win the game with that. And I mean, it's no secret on this podcast that that's something I've been criticising this team for weeks now.
Yeah,
Like,
agreed.
and it's hard. I guess that it's a really hard position to be in midway through the season to try and instill that when it's not been the case. It sounds like the sort of philosophy that almost needs a pre-season to adapt to, and it'll be interesting to see how quickly he's able to turn it around. And that transition, I think, is the important part, right? Because any manager that you take on with a defined style or a defined philosophy has the potential for success once you get to that end point. But it's the transition from this point to that that's important. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't see us firing him before the end of the season if it doesn't go well either. So,
I agree, but only from a financial perspective,
yeah, 100%.
because we
We
have
did
been
it
here
before and it
before,
was stupid.
and it took something like 30 odd days, and Saints fans notoriously bad when it comes to. That's not true. That's not true. We're not notoriously bad for getting behind managers. But what I mean is that when things change, there is usually a small percentage, like there is at any club, that get very, very vocal very, very quickly. And like I could easily see, I can already picture what a Juric out banner would look like in my head. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of worrying thing, because it's like we're going to have to back him no matter what, because at this
Yeah.
point we already have kind of the feeling that we're down, right? When Hasenhüttl went, it was because we thought, oh my God, he's going to drive us out. We need to find someone else. And then that person proceeded to be absolutely insane, but not make any differences on the pitch whatsoever, really. And also complained it was to do with the fact that he was kind of too scared to stand up to the players. And then we ended up sort of seeing out the season with someone that's now gone on to have a great career, but was not ready for that step. I feel like this guy seems unfazed by the Premier League and unfazed by that level of stuff.
Yeah, he's certainly not going to be dropping. Well, I mean, he might well be dropping quotes for sound bites that for days, but they're not going to be of the same ilk of
Yeah,
Nathan Jones. And I
exactly.
could have gone
And
and married. He seems like someone who's going to immediately be all in, and I like that. I guess it
yeah, it's been a
is.
while since we've had that, really. I know that Russell Martin, as much as he was a Southampton manager and brought a lot of togetherness with him and sort of like within the squad and things, I think that he cared about Southampton, but ultimately he showed that his style of football is what he cared about more. Because if he cared about the club more, he would have changed, because he knew. But he said he's going to live by the sword, die by the sword, and he's unfortunately died by the sword. And if someone who's used to coming in and going absolutely mad and overworking and kind of, going in from full throttle is something that I think we've wanted to see for a while. Like, I'm not saying that he needs to cry if we beat Liverpool, but
Yeah,
it would be nice to see. I guess it's just going to be such a different character.
yeah,
And I think that's going to be one of the things exciting. You've got sort of a young 38-year-old guy, dating an ex glamour model who cared about the club, but was very sort of calm in his approach. And you've now got, as Greg likely pointed out, this kind of Croat that's happy to have a scrap, that is a self-proclaimed metalhead and can just lift off a bunch of death metal bands he's into. And you're like, that is going to be a shock to a lot of these players who, let's place it, probably you can hear from a lot of the sound bites over the summer what their favourite songs are. And I think that it's going to be a very strange dressing room going forward. But
good.
yeah,
It needs
different is
something
what we wanted.
different. Yeah, and
Different's what we wanted.
I mean, the interesting point for me is if he comes in for 6 months and does really well, and like we put up a really good fight, and we don't embarrass ourselves, we get ourselves into a much better position, but we still finish, I don't know, 18th and get relegated. Do we then end up starting over, or is that breaking the contract as much for us as for him? That's my next visible point of concern, right? Obviously, there's concern that he just doesn't take off and do a very good job, or struggles with this transition. But the optimist in me looks past that and sees us doing well, gets the fight in at the end of the season, but sees that potential hookup of, if he comes in and does improve the squad, do we keep him if we still go down, even with improvement?
Yeah, especially where it for a group of people that have been so concerned about stability, it is kind of mad that they have provided stability in the way that it is the same thing that they're doing over and over again. Like, fire a manager around Christmas time, bring in another manager. The only way that it would be exactly the same is if we get rid of him after 35 days and then bring back Matt Gill and put him in charge for a bit. But I don't see that happening, and I think yeah, at the moment that there's a is the time for, in my opinion, cautious optimism. It is not the most glamorous Ferrari style appointment. It was never going to be that. It
I
isn't.
disagree, though. I just think that
No.
you're right. Like, it's not like we've gone out and got, like the next Alex Ferguson, but it's someone different, someone international. He's got proven, like, yeah, his last reign as manager wasn't great, but he's got proven success elsewhere, like to the clubs that he's been at's definition of success. Like,
Yes, that's true.
it's a for me, it is like as glamorous as you would expect based on our budget. Like, I think that it is. There are a lot of complaints about, oh, we're just going to be getting another championship manager preparing for the championship, but we've not done that. It is potentially a bit of a risk. There's definitely concerns, but it's bold and I like it. And I think it is a bit glamorous to grab a bit of proven quality from an international market and say, go on then, do it in the Premier League.
Yeah,
Keep
no,
us up, break some records. Let's go for it.
I
Ruffle some
agree.
feathers.
I agree with that, and I would also point out that there's information news knocking around. As I said, everything, take it with a pinch of salt. That apparently he was the first choice to get in before they decided to go for Nathan Jones, the last relegation. So maybe this has always been in the back of their mind. And I don't know if
Yeah.
that's, but
That doesn't
that
fill
is
me as
also a
much confidence as you'd like, because, like, great, it means that they've, like, had him in mind for this long time and he's been part of their vision, but also part of that vision included hiring Nathan Jones. So,
they are still the same company, and they may have learned lessons this time around. But also, I find it baffling that one of the things. Okay, so we'll move on and take a break shortly. But one of the things that I find baffling about the whole way that this has gone is that the first time we got rid of a manager, when we got rid of Hassenhut and replaced with Nathan Jones, we all went, "Oh my goodness, we've got a championship manager in. That's insane." And then, as you pointed out, we've got rid of people this time around and been like, we shouldn't get a championship manager. But also, there's far more of a realistic prospect that we're going to have to deal with the championship. So we started looking at championship managers, and then we decided on one who had a connection to the club, and he seems to have been the favourite. And then, as you said, yeah, this left field pick that's come out that's managed internationally in what would be it's Italy's equivalent of the Premier League, and there's a lot. I guess it is slightly more glamorous, but it is also a huge unknown. And I think that's going to be the thing that's probably upset the most people, is that, like, sometimes you want change, but not too different. And this seems like a big change, but because he was already on the list, it also feels like, Dragon's picked up the phone and gone, "Hello, mate, you're unemployed now. I was talking about that job a couple of years ago. Do you fancy it?" "Yeah, all right." And they're like, "Oh, we don't need to pay all these guys a couple million quid each." So there's lots of things to be optimistic about. There's a lot of uncertainties, and quite frankly, we're just going to have to see how it plays out. But it ends the uncertain period we're currently in, and
it leads us
supposedly he's going to be
nicely
in
to the
charge of.
next point I want to talk to you about, actually, but I guess
Good.
I'll leave that until after our message.
So, the Global Sports Podcast Network is changing the face of football podcasting with dedicated daily content for every Premier League team, women's football, fantasy football, and a daily Premier League wrap up in over 5 different languages. This is your one stop shop for your daily football fix. Find GSPN wherever you find your usual podcasts. And we're back. So, mate, you said you have
Yeah.
a
All right.
point you want to
I've
make.
got more a question for you, right? Okay.
Let's go.
Sports Republic have obviously had mixed reception, and they've definitely come under criticism, especially towards the end of Russell Martin's tenure with us. Right now, they've made improvements to the ground, and I think that almost undisputedly across the fan base, you can acknowledge that clearly they've got the ability to run a business. The question marks are over the football side of things. And so, with this, like you say, bold and brave and different appointment, how much more, if it doesn't go well, how much more patience does the fan base have with that, as with them as owners? Because there's been chatter about them being the problem for a while.
All the people
If this is
that
another signing that goes wrong, is that does that chatter become too loud? Is where I'm at.
35 quid to go and see us play Liverpool the other day after we've won one game this season and what, like 2 or 3 league games or League Cup games. Again, as I keep pointing out, there's a lot of economic investment into running the business side of things, and they keep forgetting that their primary motivation is football. If they keep undercutting and being cheap around it and not really knowing what to do, it will become a problem. I struggle to see the fan base mobilize in a way that would make a difference, because if that was the case, I think we already would have, unless it gets to a point where the club comes under extreme financial scrutiny, like we go down to the Championship and then we end up going down to League One, and all of a sudden income becomes a huge problem, because ultimately they want money out of this. And they all have their own business interests as well. They have multiple clubs that they're interested in. Obviously we are the flagship club, but there is other things that are going on in their business that aren't the most important. We like to think we are, and we should be, because of the revenue and the Premier League and this and the other. But I'm kind of the impression that they haven't shown that they know how to do football, and they seem to not really be learning. So if it goes disastrously wrong, well, who's appointed all of the managers in recent times that have messed up?
Yeah.
And like
Not
I've
even
said to you
just
before,
appointing
like,
the managers either, right? Because even before we got rid of Ralph, obviously Ralph wasn't a Sports Republic hire, but the season we got rid of Ralph, we actually got rid of all of his assistant coaching and staff and brought in Sports Republic idea to replace them, of which Ruben Sellers was part of that. Before sort of getting rid of Ralph, which almost in an attempt, I guess, to manage him out of the position from what it looks like from the outside looking in. And from that point, yeah, it's been a real roller coaster, right?
yeah. And this is the thing, is it's almost like, at least under Gal, they didn't care, so the people that were in the footballing positions really had to. And it still feels very much like the thing that they primarily care about at the moment is the business. Because again, you've got us losing 5-0 on the same day they opened this new pub, and now they're trying to do fancy meals. And again, like, behind the scenes, they're having all these conversations about creating essentially a giant business zone area around St Mary's, and that's lovely. But it's very similar to sort of like I can't remember the name of the guy we were speaking to at Spurs, but he was talking about Dan Levy being very same, like all sort of giant stadium, very businessy stuff. But the football stuff, it's like, you get to a Champions League final and then just don't build on that, because it doesn't matter, because the business is running well. And that is
Kind of
a
different
fear.
stakes for us, though, right? Because, like, fine, Spurs don't win a Champions League. They're still a Premier League club who are going to be competing in Europe for
Yeah,
some form of European competition. But if we sink all the way down as low as we know we can and end up in League One, a business district isn't going to be the hustle and bustle and buzz that you want. It's not. A
and it's
League
not
One
like
club's
they're
not
all
the
in here.
draw. Like,
There are other clubs that are part of their network. They are not all in here. Like, they could easily decide to sell their stake in Southampton, go back to kind of earn a little bit of money in the sort of lower French league and the top Turkish league. And obviously that's not what they want to do, but that's the kind of problem we've got. And it raises, to me, a wider question of ownership of football clubs in the Premier League, right down to the bottom, right? Like, we've all sat and seen like Wrexham do as amazing as they have because of all the stuff that's gone on behind the scenes with, having a celebrity endorsement of this and the other. And then you've also seen how, if you inject a complete, like a nation's worth of money into a football club, you can turn it into a footballing powerhouse. So there should be potentially more scrutiny. We should have never ended up with, realistically, Gal is an owner in the first place that led our club to ruin, because the first time round he failed the ownership test, and then they shifted the lines to sort of get him in. So from a personal perspective, I think that yes, they should come under more scrutiny, but also so should the league for consistently allowing things like this to happen. And I guess we'll just have to hope that it works out well going forward. But again, it's a lot of, there's a lot of relying and hoping on things sort of happening on a pitch decided by really the mentality of about 20 guys between the age of 20 to 30. Like, that's the mad thing about it, is also you could put whatever manager you want in, and you could do whatever, and you could sign what you think is an amazing player that turns out to be bad. There's also an argument that some of the decisions have just ended up being poor, but not through intentions, right? It's back to the, is it incompetence rather than malice? And that leads me again to, are they just not that great at being football owners? So they keep going, well, we'll concentrate more on the stuff that isn't football.
Yeah. Well, let's hope
so many things can happen,
but
but
it doesn't become a point of concern, right? Let's
no,
hope
but,
that this
but in the interim, we need to
Juric can come in and keep us up, and we'll just be living the dream.
Yeah,
Breaking
that's where I'm
records,
at. Like that could be it. That could be it. We are so, there is reason to be cautious as a Saints fan all the time. There's reason to be cautious, to be honest, as football fans all the time, because anything like this at any point could happen. Theoretically, if a club decides to randomly sell up in the middle of a season and allow some ridiculous multinational corporation to take over, there's not really a huge amount that you can do. All you can kind of do realistically is get behind the team, get behind the manager. But if we end up in a situation where our heritage and our club is ruined, I hope that the fan base are willing to take that step to tell them we are not happy. Because you talked about how you thought that Carabao Cup game was going to be empty, and there were a few seats empty in Northam, but it ended up selling out better than they expected. Whether that be Liverpool fans buying up seats or not, 35 quid a ticket, people complained about it, but there was still a lot of people there.
Up for that as well, right? It's like £25 nearly for the FA Cup game, which is a far cry from the days of £15 tickets for the FA Cup with a fiver for kids. It's crazy.
This is my point. Is it like we will get to a point, hopefully not, but we may end up getting to a point where we have to make those decisions and make our voices heard. And I don't think any of us ever want to end up like a sort of Reading or any of the sort of Bury, like going completely under. Like, these are all in the realms of possibility. One of my friends is a Bolton fan, and I remember watching him go through the motions as his club just got dismantled from the inside out, not being able to pay any wages, every single player gone. And then at one point they named the starting 11 that were just sort of 18-year-olds. And like that, as long as we don't end up to that position, that's going to be probably better. And I'm glad that we have a business side, but also, like, again, if your business is football needs to come pretty high up your list of priorities, and that's what we've not really seen. But that's all hypotheticals. What we do know now is that we have a new manager. He looks a bit mad. He looks a bit crazy. It looks like it's going to be at least a bit of fun to the end of the season.
I can't wait. I'm very excited.
Let's get to it. And obviously we'll be previewing Fulham and get to kind of have that discussion, because we don't know who's going to be in the dugout. Apparently, supposedly him. Who knows?
Let's get back to
Either way, mate. It's exciting.
Make football our focus as well as the boards. Let's do it.
There we go. Right. Thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy the holiday period to everybody. It's, we're kind of, I think me and you are not clocked out of this because so much is going on, but everyone knows it's kind of the end of the year and everyone's getting a bit sleepy. So look after yourselves, everybody. Check us all out on the social media. We're all over Twitter, Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram. We try and put out at least 2 bits of content a day on all of those. And yeah, to all of our new and old listeners, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.